I want to talk to you about slip and fall or trip and fall accidents. These kinds of accidents result in some of the most serious injuries because no one has any expectation of tripping or slipping and falling. And when they do, they're not in a car where they're protected from injury. They're not seat belted. And so when they go down hard. And very often they suffer broken bones. They suffer brain injuries. They have herniated discs in their backs or necks. And their lives are completely disrupted. I'm Eli Castronova. I represent injured people who are hurt in slip and fall and trip and fall accidents in Los Angeles, California. A slip and fall or a trip and fall accident is an accident that when it results in injuries, many attorneys will not take the case. They don't want to be in a situation where almost assuredly they will have to litigate. They will have to file a lawsuit, go to court, take depositions, and maybe go all the way through trial. Because they know that juries very often in these kinds of accidents feel that when somebody trips or slips and falls, it must be their fault, at least partially, because they weren't looking where they were going. It's a very absurd kind of philosophy that many people have, but there you go. I approach this in a very reasonable fashion. I make it look so illogical to expect someone to always observe their surroundings, to be looking at their feet at all times so that they won't trip over something or slip on something that shouldn't be there. I have been very successful in obtaining very large settlements and verdicts in trip and fall and slip and fall accidents. So basically what the law is in this realm, and it doesn't matter if it's in the private or public sphere. When we're talking about trip and falls or slip and falls on private property, we're talking about things such as slipping in a market or tripping in somebody's property because there's something there that is a fall hazard or a trip hazard. And in the public setting, it's very often tripping on sidewalks, such as we see everywhere in Los Angeles, where there's pads of sidewalks where the concrete is lifted up from tree roots. The city of Los Angeles has stated that they just don't want to spend the money and they don't want to take the time to do all of the work that's needed to be done. Where they planted trees years ago that were inappropriate for settings next to sidewalks because the roots were known to be very superficial, and so they lifted up the concrete. So in either of these settings, the law is almost exactly the same. But what the attorney has to do is slightly different. An owner of property or someone who controls a property or leases a property or possesses a property, they have a duty to take reasonable action to make sure that either they don't cause a danger to someone using that property or that they will inspect the property to make sure that there's nothing there that could cause someone to trip and fall or slip and fall. And as we shall see, that doesn't happen many times, and I've got many cases that show that and demonstrate that. Secondly, you have to show that they're negligent, that they were supposed to use care and they didn't use care. Then you have to show that what they did was a substantial factor. It was not trivial in causing the injury. And finally, you have to show that there was harm, and that is the injury itself and the damage that stem from that, including medical bills, loss of earnings, and also pain and suffering and loss of enjoyment of life, these real tangible injuries that people suffer when they trip and fall or slip and fall. In the private setting, the difference in the process is you have 2 years to bring a lawsuit. So you have a lot of time to do your investigation, pre-litigation, to preserve evidence, things of that nature. But when you're dealing with a public entity, such as a city or a county or a state, you have only 6 months to file a claim with that entity. So you have to know who the proper person is, or the proper entity is that owns that property. Is it the city? Is it the county? Or is it some other agency that's public? And you have to file a claim with them. If you don't do that, in certain instances, there's exceptions, but nearly always you're going to be precluded from bringing a lawsuit. Then they have 45 days to act on it, and they can either reject it, which they almost always do, because they make you prove your case, basically, or they can accept it. I've never seen a public entity accept a claim in my 40 years. So what happens is they send you a rejection in writing, usually, and then you have 6 months from that to file a lawsuit. So it's a very brief period of time. You have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, or you may lose your right to sue a city or a county or some other public agency for their negligence and their failure to use reasonable care in making sure that their property is safe. As I said, when this type of client comes in my office, what we do right away is we want to preserve evidence. We want to make sure that if it's a public setting and not private property, we want to make sure that we get photographs of the condition that caused them to slip and fall or trip and fall. If it's a private setting, such as a supermarket, we want to make sure that we send certified letters to the supermarket or other store telling them to preserve all of their video, because very often there's cameras in these stores, and we want the video for the whole day at least to show what they did before and what they did after the fall. Hopefully the cameras are situated in the right place. But if you don't do that, if you don't send that notice out, then very often these cameras are on a loop, and they erase themselves after a week or 2 weeks or 30 days, and then you've lost all video evidence. Also, it puts them on notice that you have a claim against them, and that you're going to be serious about it. Once we do litigate, whether it's against a public entity like the city or against a market, for example, we make sure that we get all of the evidence that shows what they did to try to remedy this particular problem. In markets, did they have regular, reasonable inspections or cleaning of the floor if somebody slips on a floor? Even if they did have those procedures in place, did they follow the procedures? If they did follow the procedures, did they do them reasonably? So, for example, in markets very often, they say, well, we inspect the floors every hour, and they have these little sweep sheets they sign. Maybe you've seen them in the restrooms of these markets or restaurants. But then you take the depositions of the employees, and they say, well, sometimes we did it and sometimes we didn't. It depended how busy we were. And you find out they didn't even follow the procedures, or they say, well, it's everybody's duty to look out for something on the floor. Well, we know from human nature, if everybody has a duty, then nobody does it, because they figure, well, the other guy will do it if I don't do it. That's just human nature. So to find out this kind of evidence, you have to file a lawsuit. You have to subpoena records. You have to demand records. You have to take depositions. And it's very time intensive, and it takes a lot of work. But that's how you prove your case. If you're dealing with a public entity, you have to make sure that you get the records that show when's the last time they were out looking at that sidewalk. Was it 10 years ago? Was it never? Very often, when we have sidewalk pads, these concrete pads that were lifted up by trees, what we have is we have records very often that shows that they went out there. And in fact, everybody's seen these concrete or asphalt kind of repair jobs they try to do on some of these pads that have been lifted up. So we know they were out there because only the city or the county would do that, not a private person. So we know they've been out there, and we try to find those records that show that they were out there. And very often there's a little note saying out there for the second time or third time, and it has to be repaired, and they just didn't do anything. So that's how we prove a case against the city. And again, we take depositions and demand records. And many attorneys don't want to do that. It's a lot of work. But when someone is injured and they suffer a severe injury in a trip and fall accident or a slip and fall accident, you owe that to your client, and that's what we do, as well as send them to the best doctors to make sure they get the treatment they need, and let the cities and counties and the supermarkets and restaurants know that we're willing to go all the way. I just want to tell you one very sad case I had with a woman who got injured on a sidewalk in Beverly Hills. There was a pipe that was put underneath the sidewalk by a building owner, and it went to the curb, and it was done without a permit. It was a PVC pipe. So over a number of years, the curb right adjacent to the sidewalk kind of collapsed, slowly collapsed, and to the point where there was a hole right where that pipe came out of the curb and into the street. My client was there. There were very many people on that sidewalk at the time because it's very busy in that particular area in Beverly Hills. And because of that, she was walking near the curb and stepped right into that hole and broke her hip and had to have a hip replacement. A 65-year-old woman who had just retired as a school teacher, and she was looking forward to her golden years and finally times where she can travel and enjoy her life. And she went to the hospital. She had 3 surgeries. The hip replacement did not take. It got infected. She was in and out of the hospital for a year, and then finally she died. So we are presently bringing a wrongful death case against the city, against the building owner, and we want them to account for this because, again, this shows negligence. This shows lack of due care, that they put a pipe under the sidewalk, a public sidewalk, without a permit, without any inspections, and they didn't repair this particular condition, even though it must have been there for a long time. And this caused a poor woman's life to be destroyed and her family just to be devastated. But that shows you the kinds of cases that we handle, and we know how to do it because we've been doing it many years. We do not turn down trip and fall or slip and fall accidents because they're difficult. We're there to do the best we can to make sure that someone who is harmed in these kinds of accidents has justice.
Hi there. I am an AI avatar reading a real Google review by Aisha Khan. I was in a car accident recently and Farmers was my insurance company. I have to say that I was extremely pleased with how they handled everything. Thanks for your review, Aisha Khan. It's appreciated.
Hi there. I am an AI avatar reading a real Google review. I was in an accident and filed a claim with Jacob. I found the entire process to be very easy and streamlined. Elia J. Castronova was my adjuster, and he was amazing. Thanks for your review. It's appreciated.